There once lived a woman who had one wish and one wish only, to have a little girl of her very own. The only person who could help her was an old witch who lived nearby.
I've got just the thing.
She handed the woman a magic grain of barley.
Plant this in a flower pot and you shall see.
Soon enough, a lovely flower sprang into blossom. Then the petals opened to reveal a tiny baby girl. "You're no bigger than my thumb, so I shall name you Thumbelina." There was no other child like Thumbelina. She played in her tulip petal boat and sang the sweetest songs. Amazingly though, she never grew bigger. How will we ever find a perfect match for you? But Thumbelina wasn't anxious. She was happy playing and singing in her pretty garden. Then, one night, a horrible slimy toad saw Thumbelina fast asleep in her walnut shell bed.
"My son's too ugly to find himself a wife. She'll be the perfect match for him."
The slimy toad stole Thumbelina away, and when he got home, he made sure she couldn't escape. He put Thumbelina on a water lily leaf in the middle of a big pond. As the sun rose next morning, a dozen warty old toads gathered to look at the future bride. Poor Thumbelina could do nothing but weep. Those were lucky tears, though, for on hearing her sad cries, the fishes below nibbled at the lily stem until it broke clean away. A colourful butterfly came fluttering by, and Thumbelina quickly threw her sash up to it. After a while, the butterfly tired, so a flying beetle offered Thumbelina his help. But Thumbelina had never been so high, and she trembled with fear.
"Well, you're no fun, and you've only got 2 legs."
The beetle dropped a terrified Thumbelina down into a field below. Now completely lost and far from home, she wrapped herself in a dried leaf and wandered through the cold woods full of dark shadows and strange noises. It wasn't long, though, before she stumbled upon a little cottage. When the field mouse that lived there saw how sad and sorry she looked, she brought her inside and fed her well. Thumbelina was very grateful and wondered how she could ever repay the kindly mouse.
"If you clean my house and tell me a tale or two, you are most welcome to stay."
And that's just what Thumbelina did. And so the two got along famously until one day, one of the neighbours arrived. He was a terribly greedy, short-sighted mole, and he decided to invite himself for tea. Secretly, though, he was really interested in seeing Thumbelina, and the moment he laid eyes on her, he knew he'd found his wife.
"You're the bride for me."
Thumbelina didn't want to be the wife of such a greedy creature, but the mole wouldn't listen and dragged her off. On the way, they came across a very sick swallow. Thumbelina wanted to help it, but the mole was cruel as well as greedy.
Serves him right, flying around all day.
Thumbelina, however, felt pity for the poor bird, and every day she snuck out to care for it. She looked after him so well that when springtime came, the swallow was strong enough to fly away.
I wish I could fly away too.
But she was stuck underground with the greedy mole.
"You'll be the perfect bride for me."
On the eve of her marriage, Thumbelina left the mole's cold, dark burrow to feel the wind on her face one last time. As she looked up, a tear of joy welled in her eye, for there was her friend, the swallow.
It's time to find a warmer place to go. Won't you come? Are you sure? Completely. You saved me from death. Now I must save you in return.
Thumbelina needed no further persuasion. She climbed onto the swallow's back, and they flew far, far away. When they reached a land full of flowers, the swallow gently slid Thumbelina off his back and onto a blossom. She was so overjoyed to be among flowers again, and even more delighted to discover that all the flowers around belonged to none other than the king of the flower fairies. The king was no bigger than she was, and undoubtedly the most beautiful creature she had ever seen. The king felt exactly the same about Thumbelina. He asked her to marry him, and she instantly agreed. As the queen of the flower fairies, Thumbelina was permitted to sprout white wings and accompany her husband on all his flights throughout the kingdom. At last, the tiny Thumbelina had found her perfect match.